Hello, it's been a really difficult few weeks on the home front here, so I haven't really been able to do any videos. It tends to really knock the crap out of me health-wise when things get difficult with our family, and it's a very common occurrence, unfortunately, with a child who suffers from mental illness quite severely. Um, what I'd like to talk to today is working through betrayal, or I guess how our actions affect other people, whether we realize them or not, and the effects that that can have on people. Most of us are very unself-aware. I think we'd like to think that we're self-aware, but we're not really. It takes a lot of work to become so, and it involves really looking internally into what our motives are about the things that we do, the motives that we have about ourselves, the things that we are secretly trying to get from people that we may not reveal, we may not even understand ourselves. Um, and I'll just basically say recently we had an event where someone that I cared deeply for got very hurt by someone, and the ripple effects affected me. It affected me quite deeply because of some things. I won't reveal everything, but I will say in relationships, it's very important, if you want to honor each other and build strong relationships, that you always be honest about things, no matter what they are, no matter how painful they may be. Um, Being honest about things and being forthright is the only way that you can really work through them. Hiding from things doesn't work. It's not going to serve you. It's not going to serve your relationship. It's not going to help you in the long run. And it could cause intimacy issues down the road where you become vulnerable, and everybody's vulnerable with some things. And there's a lot of people out there that only care about getting their own needs met and don't really consider the actions that they take and how it can affect other people inadvertently. And it's kind of a situation like that. So, um, unfortunately, when you're dealing with narcissistic people that aren't upfront about their motives, sometimes they can be very manipulative. They kind of look for what your weaknesses and your vulnerabilities are, and they prey on them. And for men, many times it's sex, because men are very sexual beings, not that women are not, believe me. Um, but it's very easy to fall into a situation where you may be the feeling, maybe you're not getting something from your partner, or maybe you are, but somebody else shows you attention, and it feels good when somebody shows you attention, and especially if it's in a possible romantic sort of perspective, whether anything happens from it or not. We feel flattered when somebody shows interest in us. We feel flattered when somebody thinks that we are interesting or attractive or wants to spend time with us. And sometimes we can get into situations where we may develop inappropriate feelings for those people without maybe even being honest about it ourselves. And those are always danger signs in any relationship. Um, it's been very, I've seen this a lot just with the people that I have interacted with over the many years since I'm older now. I don't look it, but I'm 51 and I've gone through a lot. I've seen many people go through a lot. I've seen a lot of times people maybe meet somebody because they're not getting what their needs are in their relationship, and fall into like an affair or something, and they get very deluded by that. And they many times they can think that, wow, this person is the one that's going to meet my needs. And there have been many instances where marriages have been broken up over things like that, because the person gets caught up in it, and because it feels so good, and they have that spark again. It's when you've been with somebody for many years, you don't really, like, you go through your honeymoon phase, and after that it's real life, and you're stuck with this person, and you're stuck with all the things that they struggle with, as well as the things that you struggle with, and all their flaws, all their, as well as all their wonderful things. But it's very important to make your partner feel validated, feel special, feel loved, to make them, just to remind them, especially with women. It's really important for women to feel special from their partners. It's very important for women to feel loved. And I will give you a secret if any men are watching this. If a woman does not feel, if your partner does not feel intimately connected to you and her intimate needs are not met, and I mean intimacy, I mean connection, being heard, being understood, being valued, being appreciated, um, women don't really feel like they really want to be sexual if they don't feel that connection. Men are different. Mostly, their intimacy can be met a lot more from sex than from, let's say, conversation. It's always not always that way, and everybody's different. Everybody has different needs, but it's something that I've seen many people fall into, and it's fun to do something salacious, and it's fun to do something that is forbidden. There's an attraction to that, and especially in our world where we're being very encouraged to kind of not focus on, I guess, what your own personal values may be and living by them. We're so bombarded with salaciousness from celebrities. We're so bombarded with, oh, this guy here. We're so bombarded with, I guess, smut gets attention. People doing really horrible things get attention and they get validated for it. And unfortunately, they get rewarded for that in our society. So we don't really understand the ramifications of that on people and on our young people. And when we see other people doing things like that on a movie or in media, or we hear stories about people having affairs, it becomes much easier to do it yourself because you kind of reason yourself, well, everybody else is doing it, and you tend to lax your morals. And I'm not saying that's what's happened in our situation. It has not, but it's a very easy dynamic to get into. And I want to, I guess, bring into people's awareness why it's really important to be honest with your partner about things. I know it's really difficult for me. I really need to know the truth about everything. It's very important to me to have total honesty no matter what it's about, because I always need to know where I stand and where things are. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that's like that. Sorry, my cat keeps hitting this, so it keeps moving. I guess want to make you aware too that if you're not getting your needs met in your relationship, to, instead of attacking your partner for it, to try to maybe explain about you that this is my needs. And there are many things in childhood that stay with us, that stay as wounds. And it's very common for us to try to fix them with romantic relationships, especially when we're young. It's a very common pattern, and a lot of people aren't very aware of that. But if we've received, if we've had any trauma in childhood, we've had any lack of love or any toxicity with our parents, or they haven't been there to support us, it leaves us with wounds, and we tend to look for people to help fill them instead of learning how to fill them ourselves. My journey has been trying very hard to work on myself and to learn to fill those things in myself, and to connect with God, to connect with Spirit, to be really forthright with myself about what those wounds are, why they occurred, and do all that I can to transcend them and heal them as a way of transcending suffering. And I've done that very well, but whenever something happens and I am very blindsided by it or get very hurt by it, those wounds always come back, as they do with everybody else. And it's sometimes very hard to come back to your center and come back to where you draw your strength from, and where you draw your integrity from, and your grounding from. I've learned it's very important to learn how to ground yourself. When you're stuck in emotion, you become very, emotions take away logic. Emotions make us feed the fears that we have. When we get stuck in emotions, we become very reactionary and we don't think of the consequences of our actions. And that's something that I guess I hope to teach you, to bring into your awareness, so that's something that if you struggle with it, you're able to work on it yourself. Um, Another thing I wanted to bring up is why I chose to try microdosing, because I guess just some acquaintances have been a bit shocked by that. And everybody has their own judgments. The more judgments we have about the world, the more judgmental we are about other people, the more judgmental we are with ourselves. And the more we are judgmental in ourselves, the more stuck we are, and the more pain it causes, the more triggers come up, the more suffering comes up. So I've learned to relinquish judgment about many things within myself, which has carried over to other things in my life, so that I'm less judgmental about other people, which also causes me not to want to gossip about other people. I'm much more interested in the exchange of ideas and learning and growing than in finding pleasure in others' adversity or finding pleasure in the salacious things that you hear from other people. And most of the time, they're not even true, or it's just like, and I've said this before, like a game in childhood where you whisper one thing in the first child's ear, and by the time it goes around the circle, it's something completely different. It's the same way with gossip and the same way with information. Everybody interprets it differently. They interpret it by their own beliefs, judgments, feelings, traumas, and whatever gets triggered from that is what they tend to pass on into that information as they spread it. And things like that can really be detrimental to people's lives. It can really hurt people in a very detrimental way. Um, and I see that very much. Men tend to gossip less than women. And I'm not using that as a generalization judgment. It's just what I've personally experienced and what I used to be like. And I've seen how toxic it can create relationship, what toxicity it can create in relationships, how hurtful it can be to people, how it can ruin lives in some cases, because people like to believe what is salacious and take pleasure in that, unfortunately. And some very big untruths can really affect people detrimentally when they're spread on social media and people make up stories about people. We've had that very much happen with my child, which has affected his mental illness very detrimentally. And have spoken about that before, and I will again. But in regards to microdosing, I'm most interested in expansion of my mind, expansion of my consciousness, expansion of my connection to all, expansion of my understanding of God, of my understanding of truth. And when you microdose, I have done it with LSD and I've done it with psilocybin. It connects to neurons in your brain that otherwise would not connect. And a microdose is about 1/10 of a dose of a regular dose. It does not get you high. It may make you feel more awareness. It may make you feel a bit more alive in the sense that, and it expands your mind, it expands your thinking. I don't recommend it for everybody. It's not something that I'm trying to promote. I'm just saying my experience with it and why I chose to do it. I know in like Silicon Valley, it's a very popular thing and it's more for productivity, for expansion of ideas, for creativity, things like that. And I've used it for that as well. I'm a very creative person and I like to look at things different than most people and look outside the box, try to think of ideas that most people wouldn't put together, and maybe take two different ideas that are kind of the opposite of each other and try to put them together and see what I come up with from that. It's served me very well, and it's allowed me to see the world very differently than most people, and I rather appreciate that. I don't really want to be a carbon copy of other people. I very much want to be my own person and want to learn and grow as much as I can through all this crazy adversity that gets thrown at us, because we have much more than most people have to deal with in just one lifetime over the past, like, just few months, never mind the past 4 years. Um, and that is the truth. Financial, spiritual, social, um, mental illness is such a difficult thing. It's such a difficult, misunderstood illness that people fear so much. And I speak about it in order to educate people so that they understand that when someone is suffering and they lash out, or they're not meaning to hurt people, they're not meaning to do anything detrimental, but they can't control themselves, they can't control their emotional state, they can't control the deep suffering that they are in, and it wears a body down. When somebody is in deep suffering, emotional suffering is much worse than physical suffering, and I'm saying that from personal experience, being in moderate to severe chronic pain for over 20 years and having to live with that, as well as having to live on and off with mental illness in my own life. Emotional pain sucks the life out of you much more than physical pain does. It really does. And it is much more detrimental to the psyche. It's much harder on your body. It's much harder to maneuver, and it's much harder to find support for, and much harder to work through. That's probably all I will say for today. And I'm going to try to keep making videos in the midst of all the craziness, because I just hope to help you with them. I'm taking some courses right now in EFT, like tapping, neuro-linguistic programming, and life coaching. So I will eventually, once I'm been able to work through them all, because they're 3 different courses, and it's important to learn as much as I can from each one before I'm able to make any offerings to other people, and work on some of my own friends and some people in my life that I know need some help, as well as myself, in order to learn proper technique and learn how to be most effective, how to connect most with people, how to facilitate healing the most efficient way possible. So that is what my plans are for the future, and that is something that I will eventually have on offer, and hopefully be able to use to serve you and be able to help you guys in your own lives. That's the only reason why I'm doing this. I hope to be able to connect to the people that will resonate with this, that need to see this, and be able to help them in their own lives by sharing my own journey and the struggles that I've had, because I've had a shit ton in my 51 years. And it's in learning and growing and sharing and connection that we learn to heal ourselves through connecting with others. And that's my deepest desire for you. So I'm sorry I've been away for a few weeks. I love you all. Anybody that sees this, I am so grateful for you. I'm so grateful that you actually are interested in what I have to say. And I will just continue to keep prodding along and learning as I go. My cat's got way more followers on Instagram than I do, but that's been kind of fun. I'm trying to make who is lovely, perfect Luca, by the way. He's like the prettiest cat ever. If anybody is a cat fan and wants to check him out on Instagram, then you are welcome to do so. So have a wonderful day, and please, everybody, I hope that you take the social isolation right now seriously. With the coronavirus pandemic, it's very important to not just think of yourselves, but to think of the collective, to think of everyone else. If you get sick and you get other people sick, someone like me with a compromised immune system, I am now in self-isolation, which is not an uncommon thing for me because I'm always sick. So I'm at home quite a bit, if I'm honest, which is why reaching out to you this way is important for me, because then at least I'm still connecting to the world and offering something to you of value that I hope you can resonate with. But I encourage you to really think of other people. If you've traveled, to choose self-isolation for 2 weeks. It's not as deadly as everybody fears, I believe, but people that are most vulnerable are the ones that are most vulnerable to dying from it. And it's a tragedy whenever something like that happens. So I encourage you very much to take that seriously, to reduce your social outings, to reduce being in any sort of groups, things like that, and to I guess take legitimate advice over fear-based advice. It's so easy to fall into false information in our world, and it's hard sometimes to understand what is real and what isn't. So I just encourage you to research things a little deeper and try to find what is the most truthful. And I guess that's all I have to say for today. So I love you all. Peace out. We'll see you next time. Bye.